Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast, brought to you by Small House Farm. If you're looking to celebrate plants and the people that love them, then this is the podcast for you. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Bevin Cohen. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. I'm glad that you could join us. We got a fun episode for you today. We're going to be sitting down with Melissa DeSa for 5 questions. Now, Melissa is a co-founder of the Florida nonprofit Working Food. She's also a seed saver, educator, and an amazing artist. It was a really fun interview. Melissa shared a lot with us about what she's got going on down there in Gainesville, including some information about a new tomato breeding project. Very exciting stuff. After the interview, we're going to be doing a little plant profile on one of my favorite all-time weeds, plantain. No, I don't mean the banana. I'm talking about plantago. If you know it, you know why I love it. So be sure to stick around and learn a little bit more about this awesome weed. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to share some of the feedback that we've been getting from folks. You know, this podcast is what you would call a labor of love. The topics that we cover, the people I get to interview, that's all very interesting to me, of course. But to be honest, I don't even really know who all out there is listening. I'm just kind of here in my little home studio plugging away. But I know people are tuning in. As of this recording, episodes of Seeds and Weeds have been downloaded in 350 cities in 16 different countries. And that's pretty cool. But it's your feedback that helps us make this show better. So please take the time to reach out, leave us a review on Apple, a comment on YouTube. You can even send us comments and ideas right on our website, seedsandweedspodcast.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Recent review that we got on Apple says, I really like the guests that are featured and I love the playful segments. That's awesome feedback. I appreciate that. You know, we've got a few different comments over on YouTube too. On our last episode with Brie Arthur and Annie Lopez, our friend NJ Garden Teacher writes, by far, this is my favorite podcast. And now that you've added Brie the Plant Lady, I love it even more. Well, you know what? We love you too, NJ Garden Teacher. And then on the top 5 peppers for our garden segment, Kathleen Foley Geiger 2511 shared that she likes to blister her shishito peppers in a dry cast iron pan and then serve them with olive oil and salt. That sounds delicious. And then Haven444, he lets us know that he grows his Tabasco peppers down in South Texas. He uses them in his homemade salsa, and he adds them to the hot sauce that he makes every year. That also sounds great. I just love those Tabasco peppers. If you'd like to share your feedback on the show, whether it's positive reviews or constructive criticism, please do on whatever platform you're listening. You can always come right to our website and leave a comment. Again, seedsandweedspodcast.com. And if you really love the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. I mean, not only do you get a bunch of great perks and groovy gifts mailed right to your home, but your support is what funds the program. We just simply can't do this without you. Some of our recent subscribers include Eileen D, Cindy T, Doug B, and Rachel M. Thank you all so much. You guys can find the link to our Patreon in the show notes or on our website. And now, let's get on to the interview. Melissa DeSa is a nonprofit leader, seed steward, artist, educator, and ecologist living in Gainesville, Florida. She's the co-founder of the nonprofit Working Food and focuses on seeds, research, growing, saving, sharing, and outreach. Today, Melissa is joining us on the podcast to answer 5 questions. Melissa, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show with us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So before we get started, how about you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
So I'm Melissa DeSa, and I'm originally from Canada, but I've been living in North Florida for about 18 years and have fallen in love with seeds and agriculture and community work. So I founded an organization 10 years ago with a friend, and we're still running it today, a nonprofit called Working Food. And we love to do education and outreach all around local food, literally from seed to plate. I know that phrase is kind of overused a lot, but literally we're doing that. We're saving the seeds, we're sharing them, we're growing them, we're teaching about them, and we're getting them onto people's plates in community. And I'm also an artist, mostly inspired by plants and insects, which is not surprising.
Right on. Okay, so today we're going to do 5 questions. Are you ready to do it?
Let's do it.
All right, number 1. If you had to pick a favorite plant or plant family, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is hard, but I guess I have 2 plant families I really love. I love cucurbits, mostly the winter squash of the moschata types. And I also really, really, really love Vigna ungulatas, the cowpea and yard long bean types. The pumpkins, the Seminole pumpkins, which are cucurbita moschata, I think that was my gateway plant into seed saving and agriculture in general. It's one of those plants, as you can appreciate as a storyteller, that has so much story and history behind it, and it's easy to grow. So when I first grew it as a novice grower, I felt pretty accomplished at having, hundreds of pounds of pumpkins and all these seeds I could save. Kind of love that one, and have been sort of kind of doing breeding work on some Seminole pumpkins. And then the cowpeas, also similarly, just because they grow so well in this climate. I'm in North Florida. I'm in Gainesville. And so it's, very hot. We're subtropical, still get some freezes, but we have a very long, hot growing season, and cowpeas just absolutely love it here. So it's another crop that's just, it's staple, it's nutritious, it's easy to grow. There's so much varietal diversity in it. It's got a really great history and story behind it. And so I really love those two. So I have two favorites.
That's fair. It's hard to pick just one.
Yes.
The Seminole pumpkin, we've actually grown it here in Michigan as well, even though it is a Florida variety. It has done very well for us here in our gardens in central Michigan. It's crazy productive. Like you said, super diverse. It's one of my favorites to grow as well.
Yeah. And I think, that's where having these communities of seed savers, like we talk a lot about regional seeds and regional varieties, and it's super important. But I think as climate is changing, especially, stuff that's worked well for us in a hotter climate is going to work well for people that are starting to experience longer seasons, warmer climates. We can really share those seeds and varieties, and then you start adapting them to Michigan. They'll get a little more suited to where you live, even though you started off with really great genetics.
Absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is grow, healthy, delicious food.
Yep.
Next question. What is your most recent garden success?
So we have been working on breeding a new variety of tomato that we've called the Evie Tomato Project. And we worked with Craig LaHoulier, who is the author of Epic Tomatoes and operated the Dwarf Tomato Breeding Project for a while. I had always been interested in the Everglades tomato, which is a kind of feral, super adapted tomato, but it's very sprawling and kind of unruly. And the fruits are teeny tiny, but they're delicious. So I always thought it would be fun just to breed it with something different. So we did a really wide cross and bred it with a dwarf variety. We've been working on that for 6 years now. And I think we're pretty close, like maybe one more growing season, and we have a stable, open pollinated variety that is, a lot more manageable in size as far as the plant goes and has bigger fruit than the Everglades, but seems to be pretty well adapted and yet to be determined, exactly how people will love it in their gardens. But we've been doing some citizen science outreachy stuff. Last year, we had a handful of gardeners try to grow it out and give some feedback on it. And this year, hopefully we can kind of narrow that down. And then the fun part will be getting to name it. So I've always said I wanted to, create a couple new varieties before I die. So at least there'll be one, hopefully soon.
That's super cool. That's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we have a little work to do. There's definitely some challenges with it that we've noticed. But one thing I've learned is you can't make everyone happy, and you also don't have a lot of control over how people grow in their gardens. And so the feedback has been ranging from, they were just sort of okay to, wow, this was amazing. It's just been really fun to kind of enjoy the process and learn a lot of things along the way.
Well, congratulations on the new tomato. So let's flip the question then. We're going to ask, what is your most recent garden failure? But more specifically, the question is, what is the lesson that you learned from a recent garden failure?
Okay, I'm sure there's a lot here. Oh God, there's so many. I would say a recent one that comes to mind, we were growing out the Jamaican cushaw squash because I wanted to increase the number of seeds that we had to be able to share them with the community. And I had 5 different sources. And what I really like to do is hybridize them all. Like they're all Jamaican cushaw. Let's grow them out in one field and kind of reinvigorate those genetics. And I don't know what happened. I think it was actually one of our seed lots from years ago that must have gotten hybridized with something else. But we got some weird looking squash coming out that were not Jamaican cushaw. And so it was a hot mess. And we don't know what these squash were, but some of them were really good. So we might save some of the seeds and move forward with them. But that was a huge failure. I don't know what the lessons were there other than mistakes happen. We'll start over again. We'll find a cleaner seed lot and go forward.
Well, that's the best you could do is go forward, right?
That's all you can do. It's always something.
It's always something. There's the lesson to learn. It's always something. So we just have to accept that, right?
It's our hashtag around here. It's always something.
I dig it. So what is a current project that you're working on that you're very excited about? So what would you like to plug today?
So I just finished working on publishing a collard journal with Chris Smith of the Utopian Seed Project, and Cynthia Greenlee was the editor. And it's a really beautiful journal that's all things collards. It's like art and recipes recipes and community stories, some history about collards. That's a really cool publication. And we all really enjoyed it. And we think it really does important work of what you and I like to do, of telling the stories of these plants.
That's super cool. And for sure, we'll get all the links from you and we'll put them down in the show notes so folks can follow up on all those different projects that you're working on. Last question. What is a project that you are not personally involved in, but you're really excited about?
Oh, I love the work that the Land Institute does, but have not really been able to make a full connection there. We grew some of their silphium plants, so that the Land Institute does a lot of really great research on developing perennial crops that are a lot more sustainable. And they had a citizen science project to participate in growing one of their perennial sunflowers they were developing for oilseed. And they did okay, but it was only like a few plants we had. And so I don't think we were the best participants providing, really great data for them. But I just love the work they do and would really like to figure out how to work more with them, or at least promote the work that they do.
That's excellent. And that is 5 questions with Melissa DeSa. All right, Melissa. So how can folks connect with you after today? Where do they find you online so they can learn more about all this cool stuff that you're involved in?
So if you want to learn about working food and some of the programs we work on with kids and seeds in our commercial kitchen, you can just look up workingfood.org and you can find all of our stuff there. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're interested in my artwork, the website is seedsandstories.blog.
Awesome. Thanks again for being on the show, Melissa. I really loved having you here with us today.
Thanks, Ben. That was fun.
I wonder if Melissa's going to send me some seeds for that tomato. It's a Florida variety, but her seeds have done well for me before, and I always love to try a new tomato. Well, you can find Melissa's links down in the show notes, and you should definitely follow Working Food on Instagram. They always got something cool going on. And now I want to talk to you about one of my absolute favorite weeds, plantain. Plantain, beautiful plantain. Now, this is an herb that you're most likely very familiar with already. You're going to be finding it in your gardens as a quote unquote weed. You're going to find it all over in your yards and, of course, growing in the cracks between the sidewalks. This is a resilient herb. It is everywhere, right? This is a great herb for you to learn if you're a beginning herbalist, because it's something that's just readily available. It grows in so many places. And as a wild plant, it's something that we don't have to take the time to try to learn how to cultivate or anything like that. Nature is already just providing it to us abundantly. For some folks, they think maybe a little too abundantly. I know people get a little discouraged with finding these types of plants, weeds like plantain growing in their gardens, but man, I absolutely love it. Those are the first ones that I'm going to harvest when I'm making room for the plants that I'm trying to intentionally cultivate in my garden, and the plantain might be in the way. I'm just going to pull her up, move her, and those are going to be the first plants that I'm going to take into the apothecary. Now, there's 2 species of plantain that are most widely distributed that you're going to find. There's the broadleaf plantain, which is a Plantago major, and the narrowleaf plantain, Plantago lanceolata. And they're often used interchangeably. So whichever one you have, feel free to use it. We have both of them here at Small House Farm. We have a big patch of the broadleaf kind of over by the chicken coop, and then the narrowleaf plantain more sporadically here and there throughout the yard. Either way, love them both, use them both, whatever you got, find it, love it, use it, right? Now, in the kitchen, you can use this herb. It's certainly edible. The most tender leaves are going to be the youngest ones at the center of the rosette, and you can harvest those, and you can eat them fresh if you want. But as the plant ages, those leaves are going to get a little tough. You're going to want to cook them. You'll see that along the leaf, it's got these parallel veins. And what you can do is you can grab both ends of the leaf, at the stem end where you cut it off and at the very tip, and you can pull them apart, and it'll actually pull those strings, those veins right out of it. You can get those out of the way because they do get a little tough and chewy. Either way, you're going to want to cook these older leaves a little bit, cook them down, use them in your soups and stews or what have you, because they do get a little tough to chew. But the fresh leaves are nice and tender and you can use them. And both the old and young leaves are both high in vitamin C. So they're very nutritious and delicious. Plantain seeds are also edible. A lot of folks like to go to the health food store and buy something called psyllium husk. It's high in fiber. It's a popular health food supplement that people like to buy. But those are actually from a species of plantain. Those are plantain seeds. Why go to the health food store and buy that when it's growing right in your yard? So you can go and gather those seeds. They're edible. The leaves are edible. Absolutely wonderful plant for culinary applications. But it is most commonly used in the apothecary. What a wondrous plant that is. It's anti-inflammatory. You can take a plantain leaf, and this is probably its most popular use. You can take a plantain leaf, you can chew it up, and you can apply it onto bug bites, bee stings, rashes, poison ivy, that sort of thing. And it's going to help with the swelling. It's going to help with the itching on contact. You just chew it up, rub it right onto the affected area, and you'll get relief almost immediately. Absolutely wonderful plant. The leaves have a a compound in them called allantoin. And allantoin will actually help convince skin cells to reproduce at a faster rate. So this is a wonderful herb that we can use to heal wounds, cuts and scratches and abrasions and that sort of thing. We will infuse it in oil. We typically use some sunflower oil, maybe some olive oil if that's what you have. We'll infuse it in oil to make plantain salve, which is great for topical applications, like I said, for cuts and scratches, but also again for bug bites and bee stings and that sort of thing. Dry, itchy, red, rashy skin, plantain. You got an infection from a splinter, plantain. You got a bug bite, plantain, right? Plantain is a go-to herb for so many things. And again, it is growing abundantly everywhere that we go. So as you're beginning your herbal journey, look to these herbs that are just right outside your door, right in your backyard, maybe sneaking into your garden and getting in the way of the things that you're trying to grow. It's okay. She's your friend. She's an ally. And she's coming there to let you know, hey, here I am. You want to use some plantain? I'm ready to be harvested. You can pick this plantain, take it in the apothecary and work with it. Learn to love it. If you're an experienced herbalist, you already know how groovy plantain is, most certainly. So this is just a friendly reminder. As spring is coming, the plantain's going to start popping out of the gardens. Go and find it. And together we can just love that good old plantain. And of course, you know, plantain is one of the herbs that I talk about in my book, The Artisan Herbalist. And if you don't have a copy of that yet, you can find it at theartisanherbalist.com. It's got a nice write-up about the plant, and it has lots of information on how you can use this beneficial wild herb in your medicine making. And that's all she wrote, folks. That's the end of the show. Thanks again to Melissa DeSa for joining us today. This show was written, edited, and produced by all of us here at Small House Farm. Remember, you can always support the podcast via Patreon, and that link and many more can be found at seedsandweedspodcast.com. The music you're listening to right now is Ragtime Dance by Scott Joplin. I'm Bevin Cohen, and we'll see you next time.